Hey, tonight we explore the forgotten warmth of medieval stone walls, where winter's bite met human ingenuity. As snow piled against ancient towers and bitter winds howled through valleys below, those within these massive fortresses developed remarkable ways to fend off winter's chill. The methods were clever, the materials simple, yet together they created pockets of comfort amidst the harshest conditions. Let your mind wander back to a time when fire, fabric, and fellowship combined to create warmth in seemingly impossible circumstances. If you're enjoying this peaceful moment, please like, share, and subscribe. What dreams might visit you tonight as you listen from your comfortable bed? Dim your lights now. Perhaps light a candle nearby. Let its gentle flicker cast dancing shadows on your walls as the soft hum of your world fades away. Breathe deeply and allow your consciousness to drift backward through the centuries to stone walls that have witnessed countless winters come and pass. You stand at the edge of a snow-covered ridge, your breath hanging as mist before your face. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the white valley below, where a massive stone fortress rises from the landscape like something grown from the earth itself. The castle's grey walls absorb the last golden light of day, and smoke rises from numerous chimneys and vents, curling upward into the darkening sky. The bitter wind tugs at your cloak as you make your way down the path toward the castle gates. This is Headingham Castle in Essex, and the year is 1213. Winter has gripped the land with unusual ferocity this season. The paths between villages have disappeared beneath snowdrifts, and wolves have grown bold, venturing closer to human settlements than they have in living memory. But here, within these massive stone walls, you will discover how those of noble birth maintained comfort when nature was at its most unforgiving. Your boots crunch through fresh snow as you approach the gatehouse. The guards recognize you as a welcome visitor, and with a nod, they signal for the gates to open. The massive wooden doors groan as they swing inward, revealing the bustling bailey within. The transition from the silent, snow-shrouded countryside to this hive of activity is jarring. Servants hurry about their tasks, stable boys lead horses to shelter, and a group of men unload a cart piled high with split logs, precious fuel for the fires that will ward off tonight's chill. As you step through the gates, you notice the change in temperature immediately. Even in this open courtyard, surrounded by stone walls that block the wind, the air feels several degrees warmer than outside. Castle design itself provides the first layer of protection against winter's assault. The high walls that defend against human enemies serve equally well against the wind, creating a microclimate within the castle grounds that is noticeably more hospitable. A steward hurries to meet you, his woolen cloak pinned at the shoulder with a simple bronze brooch. "Welcome," he says, bowing slightly. "My lord has been expecting you. Please, follow me to the keep, where it's warm." You follow him across the bailey toward the massive square keep that forms the heart of the castle. Your eyes are drawn upward. To its impressive height, 5 stories of solid Norman construction. The walls are 12 feet thick at the base, tapering slightly as they rise. These massive walls serve dual purposes: defense against siege engines and insulation against the cold. The steward notices your gaze. The thickness of the walls helps keep the warmth in, he explains as you walk. In summer, they keep us cool, and in winter, once the stones hold heat from our fires, they release it slowly throughout the night. You enter through the keep's main door, climbing a set of stone stairs to reach the entrance on the second level. Another defensive feature that also serves to elevate the main living quarters above the damp ground. The moment you step inside, you feel the difference. The air here is not warm by modern standards, but compared to the biting cold outside, it feels like a welcome embrace. The first thing that strikes you is the smell. Wood smoke mingles with the sense of roasting meat, beeswax candles, and the distinctive, slightly musty odor of rush matting strewn with dried herbs. The great hall stretches before you, its high ceiling disappearing into shadow despite the numerous torches and candles that illuminate the space. At the far end, a fire roars in a massive central hearth, with smoke rising to escape through a vent in the roof above. The steward leads you toward the fire, where several figures are seated on benches, engaged in conversation. The Earl himself rises to greet you, his heavy, fur-lined robe sweeping the floor as he moves. "Ah, our guest arrives. Come, warm yourself by the fire. You must be chilled to the bone from your journey." You move gratefully toward the central hearth, extending your hands toward the flames. The heat radiates intensely from the massive fire, where logs as thick as a man's thigh burn steadily. This is the primary source of warmth in the great hall, the central hearth. Unlike the fireplaces you might find in smaller chambers, this open hearth allows heat to radiate in all directions, warming the entire space. "We keep it burning day and night in this weather," the Earl says, noticing your appreciation of the fire. The servants add logs throughout the night. By morning, the stones of the hall have absorbed enough heat to keep some warmth, even when the flames die down. As you warm your hands, you take note of the hall's other features that combat the cold. The windows, narrow slits designed primarily for defense, minimize heat loss, while still allowing some natural light. In the harshest weather, these openings are covered with wooden shutters. Some have translucent coverings made of oiled linen or parchment that allow diffuse light to enter while blocking drafts. The floors beneath your feet are covered in layers of protection against the cold. First, rush matting woven from local marshes provides basic insulation. Scattered among the rushes are aromatic herbs, rosemary, lavender, and meadowsweet, that release pleasant fragrances when crushed underfoot and help mask less pleasant odors. In this noble household, the rushes are changed regularly, unlike in poorer dwellings where they might remain for months, accumulating dirt and vermin. Above the rush matting in the lord's area of the hall, you notice woolen carpets in rich colors, an expensive luxury that provides additional insulation and comfort. Beneath the carpets and rushes, the stone floor conceals another medieval innovation, a rudimentary form of underfloor heating. In some chambers, the Earl explains, seeing your interest, we have flues running beneath the floors that channel heat from the kitchen fires. It's an old Roman technique, though not as sophisticated as theirs once were. Still, it takes the edge off the cold stone. This hypercoarse system is indeed a remnant of Roman influence, though simplified. Hot air from fires, usually kitchen fires to maximize efficiency, is channeled through spaces beneath certain floors, warming the stone above. It's an early form of central heating, though limited to only the most important rooms. A servant approaches, offering you a cup of mulled wine. You accept gratefully, wrapping your fingers around the warm vessel and breathing in the aromatic steam that rises from the spice liquid. The wine itself serves multiple purposes. The alcohol warms from within, while the heated vessel warms your hands. The spices, cinnamon, cloves, nutmeg, are believed to have warming properties according to medieval medical understanding. As you sip the warm drink, the Earl invites you to join him at the high table for the evening meal. Tonight, we feast well, he says. In winter, we slaughter animals we cannot feed through the cold months, so our tables are abundant despite the season's harshness. You take your place at the table, noticing the high-backed chairs that create small pockets of still air, protecting those seated from drafts. Above the high table hangs a fabric canopy that serves a similar purpose, preventing the rising heat from escaping directly upward, and instead directing it toward those seated below. These simple measures create microclimates of relative comfort within the larger space of the hall. The meal is indeed abundant. Roast meats, preserved fruits, bread still warm from the ovens, and pottage rich with dried peas and root vegetables, stored in the castle's cellars. The food itself is part of the castle's winter warming strategy. The kitchens, located in a separate building to reduce fire risk to the main structure, burn continuously during winter days, and the heat of cooking is maximized by baking bread in the morning and roasting meats later, ensuring the ovens are used efficiently throughout the day. As you eat, you observe the people gathered in the hall. Everyone, from the highest noble to the lowest serving boy, wears multiple layers of clothing. For the wealthy, these include undergarments of linen, middle layers of wool, and outer garments, lined or trimmed with fur. The Earl's robe is lined with fox fur, while his wife wears a cloak lined with squirrel pelts. Even indoor hats are common. You notice several men wearing caps that cover their ears, and women with linen veils that trap warm air around their heads and necks. The secret to winter comfort is layers, the Earl's wife tells you, noticing your observation. Not just in clothing, but in everything. Layer rushes on the floor, hangings on the walls, furs on the benches. Each barrier keeps the warmth in and the cold out. Indeed, you notice that despite the massive space of the great hall, most activity centers around the hearth, with carefully placed screens creating a smaller area of concentrated warmth. People move within these invisible boundaries of heat, rarely straying to the colder edges of the room unless necessary. After the meal, as evening deepens into night, the Earl suggests showing you to your quarters. You'll sleep in the solar tonight, he says, referring to the private family chamber above the great hall. It's the warmest room in the keep. You follow him up a narrow spiral staircase built within the thickness of the wall itself. The stairs are intentionally narrow and wind clockwise, a defensive feature that favors right-handed defenders in case of attack, but which also minimizes the space through which heat can escape and cold air can descend. The solar is noticeably warmer than the great hall below. Here, the luxury of privacy combines with practical elements of winter comfort. Unlike the central hearth of the great hall, the solar features a fireplace built into the wall, with a chimney that draws smoke upward. This marks a significant advancement in heating technology, the ability to have fire without smoke filling the room, allowing for smaller, more easily heated spaces. The chimney is a fairly recent improvement, the Earl explains with evident pride. My grandfather's generation would have relied solely on braziers in chambers like this, with the smoke finding its way out through vents in the ceiling. The fireplace gives cleaner heat. The walls of the solar display another layer of winter defense. Tapestries hang on every wall, depicting hunting scenes and biblical stories. These aren't merely decorative. The heavy woven fabrics provide crucial insulation, creating a layer of trapped air between the cold stone and the room's interior. In some places, the tapestries hang slightly away from the wall, maximizing this insulating effect. Where there are no tapestries, wooden paneling covers some walls, another innovation that provides better insulation than bare stone. The combination of wood, fabric, and stone creates a remarkably effective barrier against the cold, especially when maintained at a constant temperature by the fireplace. The bed prepared for you demonstrates yet more layers of medieval winter comfort. It stands on a slightly raised platform to distance sleepers from the drafts that creep along the floor. The frame supports a mattress stuffed with clean straw and wool, far more comfortable than the pallets that common folk might sleep upon. Over this lies a linen sheet, multiple woolen blankets, and a coverlet stuffed with down feathers, an expensive luxury reserved for noble households. Heavy bed curtains hang from a frame surrounding the bed, ready to be drawn close to create an even smaller pocket of warmth for sleeping. A warming pan, a metal container filled with hot embers from the fire, has already been passed between the sheets to take the chill from the bed before you retire. "We'll leave you to rest," the Earl says. "A servant will maintain your fire through the night. Sleep well, and don't hesitate to request another blanket if you find yourself cold." After the Earl departs, you explore the chamber more thoroughly. Besides the bed and fireplace, you find other comfort-bringing items: a chair with a high back positioned near the fire, a foot warmer, a wooden box with a perforated top and space inside for hot coals, and furs thrown over sitting areas. A small table holds a candle and a cup of warmed hippocras, a spiced wine believed to aid sleep and ward off the night's chill. Through the slit window, now covered with its wooden shutter, you hear the wind rising, bringing the promise of more snow. Inside, protected by massive stone walls, warmed by fire and cocooned in layers of wool, fur, and fabric, you understand how these medieval castles, often depicted as cold, drafty places in modern imagination, could indeed provide refuge against winter's harshest aspects. When you finally retire to bed, pulling the heavy curtains closed around you, you create a microclimate within the larger warmth of the room, a pocket of still air that your body heat will soon warm to. Comfortable, sleeping temperature. The bed curtains, you realize, serve the same purpose as the castle walls themselves, creating barriers against the movement of air, trapping heat where it's needed most. As you drift towards sleep, you hear the faint sounds of the castle settling into its nighttime routine, the changing of guards on the walls, the distant bark of dogs in the bailey, the crack and pop of burning logs in the fireplace. These massive stone structures, built primarily for defense, have evolved techniques to defend equally well against the assault of winter. Morning comes with diffuse grey light filtering through the oiled parchment that covers one small window. The servant has maintained your fire as promised, and the room holds its warmth despite the frost patterns visible on the inside of the shutters covering the larger window. When you pull back the shutter to look outside, you see that fresh snow has fallen during the night, covering the bailey in a pristine white blanket that is already being disturbed by the first activities of the day. After breaking your fast with bread, cheese, and ale in the great hall, where the central fire has already been built up to its full strength, the Earl suggests a tour of the castle's other winter adaptations. "You've seen how the nobility stays warm," he says, "but a castle is a community of many people, all of whom must survive the winter." He leads you first to the kitchen building, where the heat is intense and the air thick with the aromas of baking bread and simmering pottage. Here, several fires burn continuously, providing not only cooking heat, but warming the stones of adjacent rooms. The kitchen connects to a series of storerooms where winter provisions are kept. Barrels of salted meat, sacks of grain, root vegetables in sand to prevent rotting, dried fruits, and nuts. The castle's preparation for winter begins long before the first snow falls, with preservation activities continuing from late summer through autumn. A castle that cannot feed itself through winter is vulnerable, the Earl explains. We store enough to sustain everyone within these walls until spring brings fresh food again. From the kitchen, you move to see the servants' quarters, considerably less luxurious than the solar where you spent the night, but still designed with winter in mind. Here, people sleep communally, often sharing pallets and blankets, using collective body heat as an additional warming method. The rooms are small with low ceilings, easier to heat than the grand spaces of the great hall or chapel. In the stables, you see how even the animals receive winter consideration. The horses have blankets of coarse wool, and the stable itself is built with thick walls and small windows. Fresh straw provides insulation on the floor, and the combined body heat of multiple animals makes the space surprisingly warm, despite having no artificial heat source. Even the location of buildings serves winter purposes, the Earl tells you as you walk through the bailey. The stables and smithy are positioned to block the prevailing wind from the living quarters. The smithy's forge burns nearly continuously, in winter, providing work heat that we capitalize upon. Indeed, as you pass the smithy, the heat radiating from the small building is palpable. Around it, other workers have positioned their winter tasks to benefit from the excess warmth. A woman spins wool on a drop spindle. A man repairs leather harnesses. Children card wool for spinning, all clustered near the warmth of the forge. By midday, you have toured the entire castle complex, seeing how each aspect of design and daily life contributes to winter survival. You've observed the massive wood piles stacked against inner walls, the carefully managed consumption of fuel, the strategic use of every bit of heat generated. You've seen the community aspects of winter living, how people gather in shared spaces, how work and leisure activities cluster around heat sources, how even the animals are incorporated into the castle's heat management strategy. As you prepare to depart, the Earl offers some final observations. Stone castles like Hedingham are relatively new to England, he tells you. Our ancestors lived in wooden halls, which were in some ways easier to heat, but far more vulnerable to fire and attack. We've had to adapt Roman techniques and develop our own methods to make these stone fortresses habitable in winter. You thank the Earl for his hospitality and insights, and as you ride away from the castle, you look back at its imposing silhouette against the winter sky. The smoke rising from multiple chimneys and vents now tells a different story than it did upon your arrival. Each plume represents not just fire, but a carefully managed system of heat creation and conservation, the result of generations of accumulated knowledge about surviving winter within stone walls. The medieval castle, you now understand, is not simply a military fortification, but a complex environmental system, managing heat, water, food, and waste for hundreds of people through the most challenging season of the year. Its massive walls serve not only to keep enemies out, but to keep precious warmth in, creating a microclimate within that defies the bitter cold beyond. As you continue your journey through the snow-covered landscape, the lessons of Hedingham Castle travel with you. How human ingenuity turns even the most challenging environments into places of relative comfort. How generations of practical wisdom accumulate into effective survival strategies. And how the very features that make castles formidable against human enemies also make them fortresses against the assault of winter itself. With each hoofbeat carrying you farther from the castle, you reflect on how its winter adaptations mirror the broader story of human civilization. Our endless drive to transform inhospitable environments into places where we can not merely survive, but find comfort and community. Even in the darkest and coldest times of the year, the castle behind you, its grey stone now fading into the distance, stands as a testament to this timeless human endeavor. And now, this story draws to a close. Take a deep breath as we gently move forward in time into the next chapter of your journey. Distant pines sway beneath winter stars as the mist of time shifts and reforms. You feel yourself drifting northward, where stone walls grow thicker and winters more severe. The soft glow of firelight beckons from tower windows as you approach a Scottish Highland castle, its battlements crowned with snow like a winter monarch. You approach Castle Urquhart as twilight deepens over Loch Ness, the massive fortress silhouetted against the purpling sky of a Scottish winter evening. The year is 1308, and Scotland's highlands are locked in winter's unforgiving embrace. Around you, the snow lies deep upon the slopes that descend to the loch's edge, where fragments of ice drift in the dark waters. The wind carries the scent of pine and peat smoke, the latter rising from the castle's chimneys in thick plumes that speak of warmth within. Your cloak is dusted with snow, your fingers numb despite woolen gloves, as you make the final approach to the castle gates. Unlike the symmetrical Norman keeps of southern England, Urquhart Castle sprawls across its promontory in an organic fashion, buildings added over centuries to create a complex that follows the contours of the land. Its stones, dark and weathered by countless Highland winters, seem to hold the very memory of cold in their rough surfaces. The gates creak open at your approach, and you're greeted by a burly gatekeeper whose beard is rimed with frost from his breath. "Come in quickly," he urges in a thick Highland accent. Night falls fast, and with it comes a cold that bites to the bone. You step into the outer bailey, where the wind's howl diminishes somewhat. Immediately, you sense the difference in castle design compared to those in milder climates. Here in the Highlands, where winter brings not just cold, but persistent wet and wind, the architecture has evolved distinctive features to combat the elements. The buildings cluster more tightly together, creating narrower passages between them that minimize exposure to wind. Roofs pitch steeply to shed the heavy snowfall, and windows are smaller, mere slits in some cases, reducing the surface through which heat can escape. A steward hurries across the bailey to meet you, a lantern swinging from his hand, casting dancing shadows across the snow-covered ground. "The laird has been expecting you," he says. "He awaits in the great hall. This way, please, before you catch your death in this bitter air." As you follow him through the castle complex, you notice servants carrying what appear to be large smooth stones into various buildings. The steward catches your questioning glance. "Heating stones," he explains. "We heat them in the kitchen ovens and place them in chambers and beds. They hold warmth for hours, a necessity in our climate. These stones, often made of soapstone, that retains heat exceptionally well, are a distinctive feature of Highland winter comfort. They serve the same purpose as the warming pans used in southern castles, but retain heat even longer, radiating warmth throughout the night." The steward leads you toward the great hall, the heart of the castle's communal life, especially in winter. Before entering, you pass through what appears to be an antechamber, a small room positioned between the outside door and the hall proper. "Our wind lobby," the steward explains, closing the outer door before opening the inner one. It traps the cold air so it doesn't rush into the hall with every entrance. This simple innovation, creating an airlock of sorts between exterior and interior spaces, is particularly important in Highland castles, where the wind's force can be tremendous. The small intermediate space may be cold itself, but it prevents the heated air of the main hall from being swept away each time the door opens. When the inner door opens, warmth and light pour out, along with the sounds of conversation and the faint strains of music. The Great Hall of Urquhart is smaller than that of Hedingham, but what it lacks in size it makes up for in coziness. The ceiling is lower, the space more compact, creating a room that requires less fuel to heat effectively. The most striking difference is the source of that heat. Rather than a central hearth, Urquhart's hall is warmed by an enormous fireplace built into the far wall. The fireplace is deep, almost a small room itself, with a stone hood that projects outward to direct the heat into the room, rather than letting it escape immediately up the chimney. Beside it stands a pile of peat bricks stacked nearly to your height, their distinctive earthy scent permeating the air. "We burn both wood and peat here," says the laird, rising from his seat near the fire to greet you. He is a weathered man with a thick beard streaked with grey, dressed in layers of wool and a fur-trimmed over tunic. "Wood is scarce in the Highlands, but peat we have in abundance. It burns slower and holds heat longer, though some dislike its smoke. Indeed, the smoke from peat fires carries a distinctive aroma, earthy and slightly sweet, that visitors either love or loathe. For Highlanders, it is the very smell of home and hearth, as characteristic of their winter comfort as the taste of their whiskey or the patterns of their woven woolens. You're guided to a seat near the fire, a chair with high sides and overhanging canopy that the laird refers to as a chair of state. Its design serves a practical purpose beyond displaying the sitter's importance. The wooden sides and top create a microclimate within the larger room, blocking drafts and trapping body heat in a small area. A servant brings you a horn cup filled with something steaming and fragrant. "Whisky beatha," the laird tells you with a slight smile. "Water of life, what we call our spirit distilled from barley. It warms from within when the cold seeps into your bones." This early form of whiskey serves as both beverage and medicine in the Highlands, its high alcohol content providing a pleasant sensation of warmth. The hot water mixed with the spirit carries the heat to your core more effectively than either would alone. Another example of practical winter wisdom. As you sip the warming drink, you observe the hall's other winter adaptations. The floors are covered not with rushes, but with thick woolen carpets over straw matting. The walls, unlike the bare stone of many castles, are nearly completely covered with woven hangings depicting clan battles and hunting scenes. Their practical purpose is immediately apparent. The heavy wool creates an insulating layer between the cold stone and the room's interior, preventing the walls from drawing heat away. "In the Highlands," the laird explains, "we cannot afford to waste warmth. Stone that protects us from our enemies in summer becomes our enemy in winter unless we cover it. Nothing is purely decorative here. Everything serves the purpose of survival." This philosophy is evident in the clothing worn by everyone in the hall. Unlike the fine silks and lightweight woolens that might be seen in southern courts, Highland winter dress is distinctively practical. The laird himself wears multiple layers, the outermost being a brat, a thick woolen cloak that can be arranged in various ways to protect against cold and wind. Others in the hall wear similar garments in the muted colours of natural wool, often woven in patterns that will later become known as tartans. After the evening meal, hearty fare, dominated by salted meats, root vegetables, and oat-based dishes, designed to provide the calories needed to maintain body heat in cold conditions. The laird suggests showing you to your chamber. "You'll stay in the tower room," he says. "It's one of our warmest sleeping chambers." You climb narrow stone stairs that spiral tightly upward within the thickness of the tower wall. The passage is illuminated by wall sconces holding rushlights, simple reed stems soaked in animal fat, that provide modest but adequate light for ascent. The stairwell itself feels noticeably warmer than similar structures in southern castles, and the laird explains the reason. The kitchen sits directly below, with its ovens against this wall. The heat rises through the stone all day and night. This deliberate positioning of sleeping quarters above heat sources is a common feature in Highland castle design, a practical use of the natural tendency of warm air to rise. The most desirable sleeping chambers are those that benefit from the residual heat of kitchens, bakehouses, or even stables below. Your chamber is small by southern standards, but arranged with winter comfort clearly in mind. The single window, narrow and deep set into the thick wall, has been covered with a wooden shutter lined with felt. A small fireplace built into the corner already holds a modest peat fire, its distinctive scent filling the room. The bed, though not as grand as the one at Hedingham, is deeply piled with furs and woolen blankets. Most distinctive is the bed's position, built into a recessed alcove in the wall, almost like a room within the room. Thick curtains hang ready to be drawn across the opening, creating an enclosed sleeping space that maximizes body heat retention. This box bed design is found throughout Scotland's cold regions, a practical response to the challenges of heating. Or sleeping spaces in severe winters. We'll heat your bed before you retire, the laird tells you, pointing to what appears to be a long-handled copper pan with a hinged lid. The warming pan takes hot embers from the fire between your sheets for a few minutes. The furs will hold the heat all night. Before leaving you to settle in, the laird demonstrates another Highland winter innovation, a wall sconce designed specifically for peat burning. Unlike the wood-burning torches used in many castles, this fixture holds a slow-burning peat, brick that provides both light and a modest amount of heat for hours with minimal attention. Sleep well, the laird says as he departs. Should you need anything in the night, pull the bell rope. Even in deepest winter, someone always remains awake to tend fires and respond to needs. Left alone, you explore your chamber more thoroughly. Besides the box bed and fireplace, you discover several distinctive Highland adaptations to cold. A stone foot warmer sits by the bedside, ready to receive hot coals from the fire. A thick woolen robe lined with fox fur hangs from a peg. A bedrobe specifically for those midnight journeys to the garderobe when leaving the warm bed is unavoidable. Most interesting is what appears at first glance to be decorative woodwork around the perimeter of the room. Closer inspection reveals it to be a system of double walls, narrow wooden panels set slightly away from the stone, creating an insulating air gap between the cold masonry and the room's interior. This technique, developed in northern regions where stone walls can become almost impossibly cold, effectively creates primitive insulation. As night deepens, you become aware of another sound beneath the constant moan of the wind around the tower. Water running through pipes within the walls. The laird had mentioned a rudimentary plumbing system that carries water from a spring on the hillside above the castle, but its winter functionality seems surprising. Upon inspection of a small washing basin in the corner, you discover the secret. The water pipes are intentionally routed near chimneys and kitchen flues, using waste heat to prevent freezing. Another example of practical Highland winter engineering. Sleep comes easily in the enclosed warmth of the box bed, beneath layers of wool and fur that create a microclimate perfectly suited to human comfort. Despite the howling wind outside and the occasional creak of timber beams responding to temperature changes, the chamber maintains a steady warmth through the night, testimony to generations of Highland experience with harsh winters. Morning arrives with pale light filtering through the felt-lined shutter. When you pull it open, you're greeted by a transformed landscape. Fresh snow blankets everything, and the loch below is partially frozen near its edges, with mist rising from the warmer water at its center. The cold that rushes in through the briefly opened window is breathtaking in its intensity, making the chamber's maintained warmth seem all the more remarkable. After breaking your fast in the great hall with porridge sweetened with honey and warmed ale, the Laird suggests a tour of the castle's winter adaptations that you haven't yet seen. A Highland castle must be prepared for isolation, he explains, as you don heavy cloaks for the outdoor portions of the tour. The snow can close mountain passes for weeks at a time. We must be self-sufficient in all things. He leads you first to the castle's storerooms, vaulted chambers built into the hillside below the main structures. Here, the natural insulating properties of earth and stone are harnessed to create spaces that maintain relatively stable temperatures regardless of exterior conditions. Root vegetables, apples, and preserved meats hang or lie in carefully organized sections. These chambers stay cold but never freeze, the Laird explains. Perfect for preserving food through the winter months. The thickness of earth above maintains a temperature just above freezing, even when outside air might be 20 degrees colder. From the storerooms, you move to the castle brewery, where large wooden vats contain ale in various stages of fermentation. The room is noticeably warm and humid, with a distinctive yeasty scent. Brewing continues year-round, the Laird tells you. The fermentation creates heat that we put to good use. The women often bring their textile work here on the coldest days to benefit from the warmth. Indeed, several women sit near the brewing vats, spinning wool on drop spindles or working at small looms. Winter, you learn, is the primary season for textile production in Highland castles, a time when agricultural work diminishes and indoor activities take precedence. The positioning of these activities near sources of heat is no accident, but a carefully developed system that recognizes the precious nature of warmth in winter. Your tour continues to one of the castle's most ingenious winter adaptations, the dovecote. Built into the thickness of a south-facing wall, this structure houses dozens of pigeons that provide fresh meat throughout winter when hunting becomes difficult and livestock might be unavailable. The dovecote's design captures solar heat during the day, while the bird's own body heat helps maintain a livable temperature overnight. Birds and beasts are part of our winter warming strategy, the Laird explains as you next visit the castle. Stables. Here, the animals are housed directly beneath certain living quarters, their collective body heat rising through wooden floors to warm the rooms above. The arrangement benefits both humans and animals. The heat from below keeps the sleeping quarters warmer, while the insulated rooms above prevent the stable heat from escaping directly to the outside. The castle's blacksmith shop demonstrates another aspect of Highland winter efficiency. Unlike in many castles, where the smithy stands isolated to reduce fire risk, at Urquhart it connects to a series of workshops where other craftsmen labour during winter months. The intense heat of the forge radiates outward, warming adjacent spaces where woodworkers, leather crafters, and others can work without their fingers becoming too stiff with cold for delicate tasks. We cannot afford specialised spaces that see use only part of the year, the Laird tells you. Every room must serve multiple purposes, and every source of heat must be maximised. This philosophy extends even to the castle's defensive features. Arrow loops, the narrow slits that allow archers to fire outward while presenting minimal target to attackers, are designed differently here than in southern fortifications. Each widens significantly on the interior side and includes shutters that can be closed when not in use, preventing the arrow loops from becoming sources of bitter drafts during winter storms. By midday, heavy snow begins to fall again, and you retreat with the Laird to the Great Hall. As servants add fresh peat to the fire, he reflects on the distinctive challenges of Highland winters. In the south, he says, they fear the cold. Here we fear the combination of cold, wind, and wet. Stone that merely chills in southern castles can kill in the Highlands if you don't understand its nature. This understanding, born of generations of hard experience, has shaped every aspect of Highland castle life, from architecture to daily routines. The castle operates on seasonal rhythms that acknowledge winter as not merely an uncomfortable period to be endured, but a dominant reality that must be accommodated through careful planning and ingenious adaptation. As evening approaches and the early winter darkness closes in, you join the castle's inhabitants in their most important cold weather ritual, the communal gathering in the Great Hall. Unlike in peacetime summer months, when people might disperse to various parts of the castle for different activities, winter brings everyone together around the main heat source, conserving fuel and creating community simultaneously. The laird takes his place at the head table, and you observe how the hall's seating arrangement reflects both social hierarchy and practical winter considerations. The high table sits furthest from doors and closest to the fire, a position of both honor and comfort. Lesser household members sit according to rank, with those of lowest status furthest from the heat source. Yet even in this hierarchical arrangement, winter necessity creates a kind of equality unknown in warmer months. The Great Hall becomes a shared sleeping space for many servants and retainers who would normally sleep in unheated outbuildings or smaller chambers. After the evening meal, pallets appear along the walls furthest from the fire, still warmer than separate unheated spaces would be. In the depths of winter, the laird explains, we all draw closer together. The castle becomes almost like a great ship, with all hands contributing to its survival through the coldest months. This cooperative aspect of castle winter life is reflected in the evening's activities. As darkness deepens outside, the hall becomes a center of productivity and entertainment simultaneously. Men repair tools and sharpen weapons by firelight. Women spin yarn and mend garments. Older people teach skills to the young. A harper plays in one corner, the music softening the constant background sounds of wind and crackling fire. You watch as a particularly interesting winter ritual unfolds, the banking of the great fire for the night. Rather than allowing it to burn down completely, servants carefully arrange the peat bricks to create a structure that will burn slowly through the night, maintaining a minimal heat source until morning, when it can be quickly rebuilt to full strength. This technique, developed specifically for peat, which has different burning properties than wood, maximizes the fuel's efficiency and ensures that the hall never completely surrenders to the cold. As you prepare to retire to your chamber, where a servant has already been sent to prepare your bed and refresh the fire, the laird offers a final observation on Highland winter survival. Stone walls and storerooms, peat fires and woolen cloaks. These are the obvious defenses against winter, he says. But the true secret lies in adaptation. We've learned to live with the cold rather than fighting constantly against it, to respect its power while finding the small spaces of comfort it allows. This philosophy, working with rather than against the reality of Highland winter, permeates every aspect of castle life you've witnessed. From the positioning of buildings to capture southern light while blocking northern winds, to the careful rotation of activities through spaces based on time of day and available heat, the castle operates as a unified system optimized for winter survival. In your chamber that night, as you settle into the box bed with its layers of insulating materials, You reflect on how different these northern adaptations are from those you observed in southern castles. The solutions may differ. Box beds instead of bed curtains, peat instead of wood, felt-lined shutters instead of oiled parchment. But the underlying principles remain constant. Barrier against barrier to separate human comfort from winter's. Bite. The wind howls with renewed vigor around the tower, driving snow against the shuttered window with audible force. Yet within your small cocoon of warmth, created through generations of Highland winter wisdom, you remain comfortable, testimony to human ingenuity in the face of nature's most challenging season. As sleep approaches, you feel a deeper appreciation for these stone fortresses of the north, not just as defensive structures against human enemies, but as carefully engineered environments that allow life to flourish even when the natural world seems most hostile to human comfort. The castle around you creaks and settles, its stones contracting in the bitter night. Yet within its walls, life continues uninterrupted, warm, productive, and communal. An island of humanity in winter's frozen sea. This part of your dream has ended, but your journey through history continues. Feel yourself drifting eastward now, carried on winter winds across the North Sea, to lands where forests stretch endlessly beneath snow-laden skies. Here, stone gives way to mighty timber, and warmth is cultivated through methods ancient and ingenious, passed down through generations of those who understand winter's deepest secrets. You approach Turmhugelberg Castle as the last light of a short winter day fades from the sky. Located in the densely forested regions of northern Germany, this fortress differs dramatically from the stone castles you visited previously. Rising before you on its artificial mound, the Hugelberg, or motte that gives such fortifications part of their name, stands a structure built primarily of massive timbers. The year is 1250, and while stone castles have become the standard in many parts of Europe, here in this heavily forested region, wood remains the primary building material even for defensive structures. Snow blankets the landscape, transforming the surrounding pine forest into a fairy tale world of white-burdened branches and shadowed pathways. The air holds an intense, crystalline quality of cold that makes each breath painful in your lungs. Yet from within the palisaded walls ahead, smoke rises from multiple sources, promising warmth in defiance of the winter's grip. As you cross the wooden bridge that spans the partially frozen moat, you notice the first distinctive feature of timber, castle construction. The bridge itself retracts into the gatehouse, creating not just a defensive barrier, but an additional insulating layer at one of the structure's most vulnerable points for heat loss. The guards who admit you quickly winch the bridge back into its retracted position, sealing the gap through which cold air might enter the castle's interior. The bailiff who greets you inside the gate is wrapped in furs, his breath forming dense clouds in the twilight air. "The Lord awaits you in the great hall," he says, gesturing toward the central structure that rises from the highest point of the motte. "Come quickly. Night brings wolves to the forest edge, and bitter cold to human bones alike." As you follow him across the inner bailey, you notice how differently this castle is arranged compared to its stone counterparts. Rather than sprawling horizontally with separate buildings for different functions, Turmhugelberg rises vertically, with multiple functions stacked within a single massive structure. This arrangement minimizes exterior wall surface, a key consideration in timber construction, where each wall loses heat more readily than stone. The Great Hall occupies the middle level of the main building, with storerooms and animal shelters below, and private chambers above. This vertical arrangement serves an important winter purpose. Heat generated on the lower levels naturally rises to warm the upper floors. while the ground-level spaces housing animals benefit from being partially embedded in the earthen motte, which provides natural insulation. Mind your step, the bailiff warns, as you climb the exterior wooden staircase that leads to the hall's entrance. The stairs are covered with a mixture of ash and sand to provide traction on ice. A simple but effective winter adaptation that prevents potentially fatal slips. The door to the Great Hall is massive, constructed of oak planks reinforced, with iron bands, and opens with surprising ease despite its weight. The moment you step through, you're enveloped in an environment starkly different from the winter world outside. The warmth is immediate and intense, carrying scents of wood smoke, roasting meat, and something sweeter, mead warming near the fire. Unlike the stone halls you've visited, where heat radiates primarily from central hearths or wall fireplaces, the wooden Great Hall of Turmhugelberg is warmed by a remarkable structure occupying one corner, a massive clay and fieldstone construction that the Germans call a Kachelofen, or tile stove. Standing taller than a man and nearly as wide as your outstretched arms. This structure radiates a steady, gentle heat that permeates the entire space. "Welcome, traveller," calls the castle's lord, rising from his seat near the stove. He is a burly man, with a red beard streaked with grey, dressed in layers of linen and wool with a fur-lined mantle across his shoulders. "Come, warm yourself by our Kachelofen, and tell us what news you bring from the south." As you approach the stove, the bailiff explains its function in a lowered voice. The fire burns within a chamber at the base, but the smoke doesn't release directly into the room. Instead, it travels through channels inside the stove's walls, heating the clay tiles before exiting through a chimney. The tiles release the heat slowly over many hours. One firing in the morning keeps the hall warm all day with minimal smoke. This innovation represents a significant advancement over the smoke-filled halls that characterized earlier medieval buildings. The Kachelofen provides the efficiency of a hypercost system within a wooden structure where open fires present a constant danger. The tiles, some plain, others decorated with biblical scenes or hunting motifs, serve both practical and aesthetic purposes, warming the space while displaying the Lord's prosperity. You're guided to a seat on the bench that wraps around the base of the stove, the most coveted position in the hall on winter evenings. The bench itself reveals another adaptation to timber castle heating. It's constructed as a hollow chest, with openings that allow warm air from the stove to circulate within before rising through small decorative openings. This heats not only those sitting upon it, but creates convection currents that distribute warmth more evenly throughout the hall. A servant offers you a wooden cup of hot mead, honey wine infused with warming spices and heated by placing a red-hot iron directly into the liquid, causing it to steam and bubble. This method of heating beverages without placing them directly over fire is common in timber structures where open flames are minimized whenever possible. As you sip the warming drink, you observe the hall's other winter adaptations. Unlike stone, castles, where tapestries serve as the primary wall insulation, here the timber walls themselves provide better natural insulation. However, additional layers have been added. The interior surfaces are covered with a mixture of clay and straw, creating an insulating barrier that also reduces draft through any gaps in the timber construction. The windows, fewer and smaller than in stone constructions, feature multiple protective layers. Wooden shutters on the exterior, followed by frames covered with scraped animal bladders or oiled linen that allow some light while blocking wind, and finally interior shutters that can be closed at night to create dead air spaces between the coverings. Most striking is the ceiling construction. Massive timbers support the upper floor, but between them The ceiling is insulated with a thick layer of clay mixed with straw and animal hair. This not only prevents heat from escaping upward, but serves as an essential fire barrier between the hall and the sleeping chambers above, a critical consideration in a wooden structure heated throughout winter. Our ancestors built entirely of wood, the Lord tells you as you comment on the construction. But too many fortresses burned, either from enemy action or from their own hearth fires. Now we build with fire's danger always in mind, clay between, timber wherever possible, and strict rules about where and how fires may burn. After the evening meal, hearty fare dominated by preserved meats, root vegetables from the castle's storage cellars, and dark bread, the Lord suggests showing you the castle's other winter adaptations. We've developed different solutions than our stone castle cousins, he says with evident pride. Sometimes necessity mothers interesting innovations. He leads you first to the level below the Great Hall, where the castle's animals are housed during the harshest winter weather. The space is warm and pungent with the smell of livestock, but remarkably well ventilated through cleverly designed channels that allow fresh air to enter while preventing direct drafts on the animals. The beasts generate significant heat, the Lord explains. That warmth rises through the floor above. See how the planks are spaced to allow some air movement while preventing drafts, and helps maintain temperature in the hall. In the deepest cold, we bring additional animals inside. A cold stable means dead livestock, and dead livestock means hunger before spring. This practical arrangement, housing heat generating animals below human living spaces, represents a distinctly northern European approach to winter warming. The shared heat benefits both humans and valuable livestock, while the thick earthen motte in which the lower level is partially embedded provides insulation from ground cold. From the stables, you climb past the Great Hall to the uppermost level of the main structure, where the Lord's family has private chambers. Here, the warming strategy changes again. Each small chamber features a miniature version of the Great Cachalothan, sized appropriately for the space. These smaller stoves connect to the same chimney system as the larger one below, creating an efficient heat distribution network throughout the building. The chamber prepared for you is this way, the Lord says, leading you to a small room near the center of the upper floor. The space is modest but remarkably warm, with wooden walls lined with woolen hangings and a floor covered with woven rush mats over sheep fleeces. A small cachalothan occupies one corner, its tiles still radiating the heat from the day's earlier firing. The bed differs significantly from those in stone castles. Rather than a four-poster frame with curtains, this is a cup bed, built as a wooden box raised on legs, with high sides and a canopy that nearly encloses the sleeping space completely. Only a narrow opening allows entry and exit, ensuring that body heat remains trapped within during the night. We'll refresh your stove before you retire, the Lord tells you. One firing will last until morning. The chimney passages run through. The wall there, he points to the wall shared with the adjacent chamber, providing additional warmth from the neighboring stove as well. This interconnected heating system, where multiple cachalothans share chimney infrastructure while warming different spaces, represents a sophisticated understanding of heat management, particularly suited to timber construction. By minimizing the number of places where flues must penetrate the wooden structure, the design reduces both fire risk and heat loss. After the Lord leaves, you explore the chamber more thoroughly. A washing basin sits on a small table, the water within still steaming slightly. Unlike in stone castles, where water might be heated by placing a container near the fire, here a heated stone has been placed directly in the basin. Another adaptation to minimize open flames in timber surroundings. The window, small even by medieval standards, features multiple layers of protection against the cold. The exterior wooden shutter has been closed for the night, and an interior frame covered with thinly scraped calfskin allows some moonlight to enter while blocking wind completely. Between these layers, the window alcove creates a dead air space that serves as additional insulation. Most interesting is the floor construction. When you step on certain areas, you notice a difference in temperature. Closer inspection reveals that beneath the rush matting, channels run through the floor planks, above chimney passages from the lower levels. This deliberate routing of warm air passages beneath areas where people frequently stand or sit represents a sophisticated understanding of comfort that belies the seemingly rustic setting. As you prepare for sleep, a servant arrives to service your cachalofen. Rather than adding wood directly to an open chamber as you might expect, she inserts fuel into a small opening that connects to the firebox from outside your chamber, in the hallway. This way, the smoke risk stays outside sleeping areas, she explains, and one person can tend several stoves without disturbing those within. The night passes in remarkable comfort. Despite the occasional creaking of timber as the structure responds to the bitter cold outside, your chamber maintains a pleasant temperature throughout the night. The kupferbed, lined with wool-stuffed mattress and furs, creates a microclimate that perfectly balances warmth and fresh air, testimony to generations of northern winter experience. Morning brings a fresh perspective on the timber castle's winter adaptations. Daylight reveals subtle features less apparent by evening's rushlight. The slight angle of the exterior walls that shed snow and rain more effectively than vertical surfaces would. The carefully planned roof overhangs that protect windows from direct precipitation, while still allowing winter sunlight to penetrate when it's most needed. The Lord invites you to join him for a tour of the castle's outer buildings after breaking your fast with porridge and dark bread in the Great Hall. Wrapped in fur-lined cloaks, you venture into the bailey, where the overnight snow crunches beneath your boots. The air is still, intensely cold, with the winter sun providing light, but little thermal comfort. A timber castle requires more maintenance than stone, the Lord tells you as you walk, but responds better to winter's challenges if properly constructed. Wood does not leach heat from the body as stone does, nor does it weep with condensation during sudden thaws. He leads you first to the bathhouse, a small timber structure set apart from the main buildings. Inside, steam rises from a large wooden tub set beside another variation of the cachalofen. This bath stove includes a feature absent from those in living quarters, a chamber filled with rounded river stones that are heated by the fire below. For steam baths, the Lord explains, water is poured over the hot stones. The Germans call it Dampfbad. We find it especially invigorating during winter months when the skin rarely feels warmth except near a fire. This dedicated bathing facility, unusual in many castles where bathing might be an occasional activity conducted in general living spaces, reflects both the greater fire safety concerns in timber structures containing water spillage away from living quarters and the Northern European emphasis on steam bathing as a winter health practice. From the bathhouse, you move to the castle's workshops, where various craftspeople continue their work despite the season. Unlike in stone castles, where workshops might be scattered around the bailey, here they concentrate in a single large building with multiple rooms arranged around a central heat source. A large forge that serves not only the blacksmith but warms the adjacent spaces where woodworkers, leather crafters, and textile workers maintain productivity through winter. Consolidation is key to winter survival, the Lord explains. Heating one workshop structure uses far less fuel than heating Many separate ones. The artisans adapt their procedures to share the space, rotating activities around the central heat source as needed. This cooperative approach extends to the carefully managed use of winter daylight. Work requiring the most visual precision is scheduled for midday when light through the oiled parchment windows reaches its brief winter maximum. Tasks requiring less visual acuity are performed in early morning or late afternoon, while those that can be done by touch and muscle memory, such as spinning thread or whittling simple items, are saved for evenings by firelight. The castles. Larder reveals another aspect of timber construction's winter advantage. Built partially into the side of the motte, with thick timber walls and a sod-covered roof, the food storage area maintains a remarkably consistent temperature just above freezing. The wooden walls, unlike stone, do not transfer exterior temperature fluctuations as readily, creating more stable conditions for food preservation. In autumn, we pack the outer walls with straw for additional insulation. The steward explains as he shows you the stored provisions. The combination of earth berming on 3 sides, thick timber walls, and straw insulation creates our winter refrigerator. Cold enough to preserve, but never so cold that liquids freeze and containers burst. By midday, heavy snow begins to fall again, and you return with the Lord to the warmth of the great hall. As servants rebuild the fire in the cachalofen, he reflects on the distinctive challenges of maintaining a timber castle through northern winters. We face 2 opposing threats, he says, watching the snow through a small window. The cold that can freeze a man to death within hours if he's unprotected, and the fire that can consume an entire timber fortress in minutes if it escapes control. Our winter adaptations must always balance between these dangers. This balance is evident in every aspect of the castle's winter arrangements, from the clay-insulated chimney passages that carry away smoke while distributing heat, to the strict regulations about when and where open flames may be used, to the strategic positioning of water barrels throughout the structure, kept from freezing by their proximity to heat sources and ready for immediate use should fire break out. As evening approaches once more, you observe the castle's transition to night routine. Unlike stone castles, where a single great fire might burn continuously, here the cachalofens are fired intensively twice daily, morning and evening, with each firing carefully managed to maximize heat retention in the masonry mass that will radiate warmth for 12 hours afterward. The Lord explains the advantages of this system as you watch the evening firing of the Great Hall's stove. The intense heat phase lasts only an hour, during which the chimney draft must be carefully monitored, but afterward we have many hours of smoke-free, gentle heat that doesn't dry the air as badly as continual open fires do. Our eyes suffer less irritation, our breathing remains easier, and our wooden furnishings don't dry and crack as they would with direct exposure to flames. This appreciation for air quality represents another distinctive aspect of northern timber castle heating. Where southern and western European castles might accept smoky atmospheres as the price of winter warmth, here the development of advanced stove technology creates living environments with noticeably better air despite the sealed nature of winter accommodations. The evening meal demonstrates another aspect of timber castle winter life: the community use of retained heat. The massive bread ovens, fired intensively in the morning for baking, retain enough heat by evening to be used for slow-cooking stews and roasts without additional fuel. Similarly, the residual heat in cachalofens that have finished their active firing phase is used for keeping food warm, drying herbs and clothing, and even as a slow heat source for brewing medicines. Nothing is wasted, the castle steward tells you as he demonstrates how wooden racks near the cachalofen are used for drying everything from laundry to apple slices for preservation. Each firing of each stove is planned to serve multiple purposes beyond simple space heating. As night deepens and you retire once more to your chamber, you reflect on the systematic approach to winter warmth you've witnessed in this timber castle, where stone fortresses rely primarily on massive construction to buffer against temperature fluctuations. Turmhugelberg employs a sophisticated understanding of heat flow, insulation principles, and the thermal properties of different materials to create microclimates of comfort within the larger hostile environment. The wooden structure itself, often dismissed by modern observers as primitive compared to stone castles, reveals itself as particularly well suited to northern winter conditions when properly designed. Its natural insulating properties, combined with careful attention to draft prevention and heat distribution, create living spaces that maintain more consistent temperatures with less fuel than many of their stone counterparts. As you settle into the Kupferbett for your final night at Turmhugelberg, the sound of wind in the surrounding pine forest creates a constant background susurration. Occasional creaks and pops from the timber structure remind you that the building itself is alive in a way that stone is not, responding to temperature changes, settling under snow loads, expanding and contracting with the rhythm of day and night. This living quality of the timber castle seems appropriate to its approach to winter survival, not a defiance of cold through sheer mass and permanence, as with stone construction, but an adaptive, responsive relationship with winter's challenges that works with available materials and natural principles to create islands of human comfort in the frozen northern landscape. In the morning, as you prepare to continue your journey, the Lord of Turmhugelberg offers a final observation. Stone castles endure for centuries with little change, he says, but timber structures must be continually renewed, repaired, and improved. Perhaps that's why we've learned to adapt so well to winter's challenges. Our very homes remind us, each year, that survival requires not just strength, but cleverness and care. With this insight accompanying you, you depart the timber castle as the morning sun glints off fresh snow. Behind you, smoke rises from multiple chimneys in the organized pattern that reflects the castle's systematic approach to heating, evidence of human ingenuity that transforms the winter forest's greatest threat, fire, into the very means of surviving its other threat, bitter cold. As you move away through the snow-laden pines, you carry with you a deeper understanding of how these northern timber fortresses, less celebrated in romantic histories than their stone counterparts, but no less ingeniously designed, created winter sanctuaries through a harmonious balance of traditional knowledge and innovative adaptation to one of humanity's most persistent challenges, finding warmth when the world goes cold. This moment fades softly now. Let's continue on, deeper into the past. The mists of time swirl more thickly now as we journey further back, to where empire meets wilderness along Hadrian's Great Wall. Here, Mediterranean ingenuity confronts British winter with remarkable systems of flowing warmth beneath stone floors. Step carefully now as we enter a world where Roman engineering creates islands of civilized comfort in a sea of northern cold. You approach Vindolanda Fortress as evening shadows lengthen across the windswept Northumbrian landscape. The year is 180 CE, and you stand at the frontier of the Roman Empire. Hadrian's Wall stretching east and west across the narrow neck of Britain, separating Roman civilization from the untamed northern tribes. Winter here bears little resemblance to the mild seasons of Rome. Instead, it brings biting winds, freezing rain, sleet, and snow that test the resolve of the Mediterranean legionaries stationed at this remote outpost. The fort rises before you, its stone walls gleaming dully in the fading light. Unlike the medieval castles of later centuries, this is a military installation designed with the systematic efficiency that characterizes Roman engineering. The rectangular layout, with its grid of streets and standardized buildings, appears strikingly ordered compared to the organic growth of medieval fortifications you've previously visited. As you approach the south gate, you notice the first adaptation to the northern climate. The entrance passage turns at a right angle within the gatehouse, creating a wind barrier that prevents direct drafts from sweeping into the fort's interior. The sentry who challenges you wears a thick woolen sagum cloak over his uniform, with leather strips wrapped around his legs, in addition to the standard caligai military boots, adaptations to the local climate not seen in warmer parts of the empire. Upon learning you carry letters of introduction from the provincial governor, the sentry summons an optio, junior officer, who escorts you into the fort proper. The moment you pass through the gatehouse, you notice the difference in temperature. Though still cold by Mediterranean standards, the air within the fort's walls feels noticeably less bitter than outside, where the wind sweeps unimpeded across the moors. The prefectus will want to meet you, the optio says, leading you along the Via Principalis, the main street that runs through the center of the fort. He's likely in the praetorium at this hour, where it's warm. As you walk through the fort, you observe how thoroughly the Romans have adapted their standard military architecture to this harsh northern environment. The buildings are constructed of local stone rather than the concrete and brick common in Italy, using thicker walls than their southern counterparts. Roofs pitch more steeply than in Mediterranean structures, designed to shed the region's heavy rain and occasional snow. Most notably, the windows are smaller, narrow openings that limit heat loss while still providing necessary light and ventilation. Some have been fitted with translucent closures made of thin sheets of mica or horn, allowing light to enter while blocking wind, an early form of window glazing rarely needed in Rome itself. The optio leads you to the praetorium, the commander's house, positioned at the center of the fort near the Principia headquarters building. As you enter this substantial stone structure, you experience an unexpected sensation, warmth radiating from beneath your feet. Mind your step, the optio warns. The floor has just been heated. You've entered your first hypocaust heated room, and the principle immediately becomes clear. The floor beneath your feet isn't solid, but suspended on small brick pillars, pili, creating a space underneath through which hot air circulates. The heat emanating from this underfloor system is steady and enveloping, warming the entire room, from below rather than from a single point source like a fireplace or brazier. The prefectus, a middle-aged man with the weathered look of someone who has served long on the frontier, rises from his desk to greet you. "Welcome to Vindolanda," he says. "You've arrived on a bitter day. I trust you appreciate our little bit of Rome transplanted to this frozen edge of the empire." He gestures for you to take a seat near a wall that radiates gentle heat. Another component of the hypocaust system. Terracotta flue tiles, tubally, line this wall, carrying the hot air from beneath the floor upward within the wall cavity before it exits through chimneys at roof level. The result is a room enveloped in warmth with heated surfaces on both floor and walls. "It's the finest achievement of our engineering," the prefectus says, noticing your appreciation of the heating system. "The hypocaust makes life bearable in this climate. Without it, we might as well be living like the natives in their smoky roundhouses." A slave brings mulled wine, heated with spices unfamiliar to the local Britons, but imported along Roman trade routes from distant eastern provinces. As you sip the warming liquid, The prefectus explains how the fort's heating systems work. The prefurnium, the furnace room, is attached to this building but separated by thick walls as a fire. Precaution, he tells you. There, slaves maintain fires that heat air, which then flows beneath our floors and through the wall cavities. The system requires constant attention. Too little heat, and the rooms grow cold. Too much, and the flues can crack, or worse, ignite. The timbers in the roof structure. This sophisticated central heating system represents the height of Roman comfort technology, a remarkable achievement for a civilization that predates medieval castle builders by nearly a millennium. The hypocaust demonstrates an advanced understanding of thermodynamics, using principles of heat transfer, airflow, and insulation to create comfortable indoor environments even in hostile climates. After discussing your business with the prefectus, he suggests a tour of the fort's winter adaptations before darkness falls completely. You'll find we've modified standard designs considerably for this climate, he says with evident pride. 15 years on this frontier teaches a man much about surviving winter. He leads you first to the thermae, the fort's bath complex. Unlike in Mediterranean regions, where baths might be somewhat separated from main buildings, here the bathing facilities connect directly to the Principia via a covered walkway, minimizing exposure to the elements when moving between buildings. The bath complex itself follows the standard Roman progression of rooms: apoditerium, changing room, frigidarium, cold bath, tepidarium, warm room, and caldarium, hot room, but with significant modifications for the northern climate. The frigidarium, traditionally unheated, here has a modest hypocaust to take the dangerous chill from the air. The tepidarium and caldarium have exceptionally thick floors, with multiple layers of concrete above their hypocausts, designed to retain heat longer during the bitter northern nights. In Rome, the baths are social centers, the prefectus explains. Here, they're necessities for survival. Without regular immersion in heated water, men succumb to the damp and cold. We maintain the fires day and night through winter, banking them, but never letting them die completely. The prefurnium, furnace room, that powers this bath complex reveals another adaptation to northern conditions. Instead of a single fire, it contains 3 separate furnaces arranged to heat different sections of the baths with varying intensities. The furnace worker, a slave specialized in this critical task, explains the challenges of his work. Different woods burn at different temperatures and rates, he tells you, showing calloused hands from years of handling fuel. Oak and ash provide long-lasting heat for overnight. For the caldarium, we use split pine that burns hot and fast when immediate heat is needed. The art is in the balance. Too much heat cracks the concrete. Too little leaves the men chilled and vulnerable to illness. From the baths, the prefectus leads you to the valetudinarium, the fort's hospital. Here the heating system has been modified for the specific needs of the ill and injured. The wards are arranged around a central heat source, with the most severely ill patients placed in rooms with the most consistent temperatures. Our military surgeons find that wound healing improves and fever patients recover faster when kept at steady warmth. The prefectus explains. The medicus in charge insists that the hospital hypocausts receive priority for fuel and maintenance above even my own quarters. This prioritization of heating resources reveals much about Roman practicality. The empire's military effectiveness depends on maintaining healthy soldiers, making the hospital's heating not a luxury but a strategic necessity. The hypocaust here operates at lower but more consistent temperatures than those in the baths or praetorium, designed for therapeutic constancy rather than comfort alone. As evening deepens into true darkness, oil lamps and tallow candles illuminate your continuing tour. The Praefectus leads you to one of the barracks blocks where ordinary legionaries are quartered. Unlike the heated luxury of the officers' quarters, here you find a different approach to winter warmth. The barracks are built on a principle of shared body heat and careful draft management. 8 men share each small room, contubernum, sleeping on raised wooden platforms that keep them off the cold stone floor. The room's only opening is a single door that faces onto a covered portico, protecting it from direct wind and weather. Small braziers provide modest heat, supplemented by the soldiers' collective body warmth in the enclosed space. Not as elegant as the hypercaust, the Praefectus acknowledges, but effective in its way. The men sleep in their sagums with woolen blankets issued specially for this posting. Those from Hispanic or Syrian cohorts suffered terribly when first posted here, but they adapt over time. This tiered approach to heating, hypocausts for critical facilities and high-ranking personnel, braziers and collective approaches for common soldiers, reflects both the practical limitations of fuel supply and the social hierarchy of Roman military life. Yet even the simplest barracks incorporate design elements specifically intended to combat the northern cold. Raised sleeping platforms, carefully oriented doorways, and roof designs that prevent snow accumulation while maximizing insulation. The fort's granaries demonstrate yet another aspect of Roman winter adaptation. These essential buildings, which store the grain that feeds the garrison through winter when local supplies are unavailable, incorporate sophisticated features to combat the region's damp conditions. Raised floors create air circulation beneath the stored grain, while vents positioned to catch prevailing winds force air through the building, preventing mold that would otherwise destroy the vital food stores. In Italia, we worry primarily about keeping grain cool and dry, the Praefectus explains. Here the challenge is preventing freezing and thawing cycles that cause condensation and subsequent rot. The granary design has been modified over decades, a frontier experience. By the time you complete your tour of the fort's main features, full night has fallen, bringing with it an intense cold that seems to radiate from the very stones. The Praefectus invites you to join him and his officers for the evening meal in the Praetorium's triclinium, dining room, another hypercaust heated space where comfort approaches that of more temperate Roman provinces. The meal itself reveals further winter adaptations. The menu features hearty stews and porridge rather than the lighter fare preferred in Rome, providing the calories needed to maintain body heat in cold conditions. Wine is served hot with spices, not just for flavor, but for warming the body from within. Even the serving dishes reflect northern adaptation. Thick ceramic vessels that retain heat longer than the finer tableware used in warmer climates. During the meal, conversation turns to the challenges of maintaining the fort through the approaching deep winter months. The Praefectus speaks candidly about the seasonal rhythm of frontier life. From November through February, we operate differently, he explains. Patrols are shorter but more frequent, allowing men to warm themselves between exposures to the elements. Training continues in the covered exercitio, exercise hall, rather than the open campus Martius. We rotate men through hypercaust heated facilities to ensure all receive some time in warmth, regardless of rank. This systematic approach, modifying standard Roman military procedures to accommodate the climate while maintaining operational effectiveness, demonstrates the empire's adaptive capacity, a key factor in its ability to hold territory across dramatically different environments from the Syrian desert to the British Highlands. After the meal, as you retire to the guest quarters prepared for you, a small but well-appointed room with its own connection to the hypocaust system. The Praefectus offers a final observation on Roman winter adaptation at this remote outpost. What you see here represents 3 generations of trial and error, he tells you. The first Roman commanders in Britannia tried to simply impose Mediterranean methods with disastrous results. Soldiers fell ill, supplies rotted, morale collapsed during winter months. What works now is a blend, Roman engineering principles applied to local conditions, using local materials. We've even adopted some native British practices for our auxiliary troops from warmer provinces. This philosophy, systematic adaptation, rather than rigid adherence to southern practices, permeates every aspect of Vindorlander's winter arrangements, from the hypocausts modified for longer burning cycles than their Italian counterparts, to the soldiers' uniforms supplemented with local wool and leather, to the diet enriched with preserved meats and root vegetables suited to northern nutrition needs. The Romans have created a distinctly local version of their civilization here on the empire's edge. Your chamber for the night exemplifies this blend. The bed, a simple wooden frame with a stuffed mattress, sits directly above one of the hypocaust's main channels, ensuring maximum benefit from the heating system. Extra woolen blankets, heavier than would be used in Rome, lie folded at the foot. The window, a small opening high on the wall, has been covered with a thin sheet of mica that allows some daylight to enter, while providing better insulation than oiled cloth would offer. Most interesting is the small wall niche containing an oil lamp and a ceramic vessel of heated stones. These stones, you learn, come from the Praefurnium, where they're kept warm at the edges of the furnace specifically for distribution to sleeping quarters. Placed in this earthenware container, they radiate gentle heat throughout the night, supplementing the hypocaust when its fires are banked to conserve fuel. As you settle onto the bed, appreciating its position over the hypocaust's warmth, you can hear the wind rising outside, bringing the promise of sleet or snow. Within these stone walls, modified by Roman engineering to create a microclimate of Mediterranean comfort in decidedly un-Mediterranean surroundings, you reflect on the ingenuity that allows this outpost of civilization to function through winter, conditions that would have been nearly unimaginable to the empire's founders. Sleep comes easily in the gentle heat rising from below, and you dream of the engineering mind that first conceived of circulating hot air through hollow spaces beneath floors and within walls, perhaps the greatest Roman contribution to the challenge of winter survival in northern climates. Morning brings pale sunlight and the hustle of a military fort beginning its day despite the frost that rimes every exposed surface. After a breakfast of porridge sweetened with imported honey and warmed wine, you tour the fort's exterior defenses with a centurion assigned as your guide. Even here, in the fort's defensive elements, winter adaptations are evident. The walkways atop the walls have been strewn with grit for secure footing on icy surfaces. The watch hours include small enclosed spaces, where sentries can warm themselves briefly without abandoning their posts. Even the latrines, those most practical of Roman innovations, have been modified with enclosed channels and continuous water flow to prevent freezing. The natives find our winter preparations amusing, the centurion tells you as you walk the perimeter. They've adapted to this climate over countless generations, living in round houses with central hearths, wearing layers of wool and animal skins, moving with the rhythms of the seasons rather than imposing their will upon them. We Romans attempt to create a piece of home wherever we go, whatever the surroundings. This observation highlights the fundamental difference between the Roman approach to winter at Vindolanda and the later medieval adaptations you've witnessed. Where medieval castle dwellers largely accepted the reality of winter and adapted their daily lives to its constraints, the Romans used their engineering prowess to create microclimates that defied the local conditions, maintaining a standardized way of life across their vast empire, regardless of local climate. The hypocaust stands as the perfect symbol of this approach, a system that requires substantial resources and constant maintenance, but which creates spaces where Romans could maintain their customary lifestyle, from daily bathing to dining practices to sleeping habits, regardless of the hostile environment outside their walls. As midday approaches, you witness the changing of the watch on the walls, observing how shifts have been shortened during winter months to prevent cold injuries among the sentries. The relieved guards head immediately to the thermae for warming baths before their meal, another adaptation to the climate that has become standard procedure at this northern post. Before you depart Vindolanda, the Prefectus shows you one final winter innovation, the fort's snow removal system. Unlike in Rome, where snow is rare enough to be a curiosity, here it represents a significant operational challenge, potentially blocking access to essential facilities or even concealing hostile approach to the walls. The fort's streets have been laid out with subtle gradients that channel meltwater toward drainage points, preventing the freeze-thaw cycles that would otherwise create treacherous ice sheets. Teams of slaves are assigned specific sectors for snow clearance, with the resulting piles strategically positioned to create additional wind barriers, protecting key pathways. Most impressive is the use of waste heat from the hypocaust system to keep certain critical areas, such as the main gate mechanism and the headquarters entrance, free of ice accumulation. Excess hot air from the bath's prefernium is channeled through ceramic pipes beneath these key areas, creating small zones where snow melts upon contact with the warmed ground. We learn more with each winter, the Prefectus tells you as you prepare to depart. Each commander adds his own refinements to the system. The Empire has stood for centuries because we adapt while remaining essentially Roman. Here at the edge of the world, facing winters that would kill Mediterranean men unprepared, we've created a pocket of civilization that functions year-round. As you ride away from Vindolanda, looking back at its orderly stone buildings with smoke rising from multiple Pryfernia, you carry with you a deeper appreciation for the engineering mind that conceived these solutions. The hypocaust system, with its suspended floors, hollow walls, precisely calculated airflows, and carefully managed fuel consumption, represents perhaps the most sophisticated heating technology that would exist in Europe until the Industrial Revolution, more than 16 centuries in the future. Yet as impressive as the technology itself may be, equally striking is the systematic thinking behind it. The Roman capacity to analyze environmental challenges, develop standardized solutions, and implement them across vast territories with local modifications as needed. This approach, combining central planning with frontier adaptation, allowed Rome to project its civilization into climates vastly different from its Mediterranean homeland. The lessons of Vindolanda would be largely forgotten in the centuries, following Rome's retreat from Britain. Medieval castle builders would rediscover some principles through trial and error, but the sophisticated hypocaust systems would remain buried beneath collapsed ruins, their function mysterious to later inhabitants who built simpler hearths above their remains. Only in the modern era would comparable heating technology, with its centralized heat sources and distribution systems, return to northern dwellings. As you continue your journey, leaving Vindolanda to fade into the mists of time, you reflect on how each age develops its own solutions to winter's challenges, some through grand engineering like the hypocaust, others through accumulated practical wisdom like the medieval castle's layered defenses against cold. Each represents humanity's persistent determination to create comfort in the face of winter's bite. A quest that continues from ancient times through the present day, with each generation adding its own innovations to the endless human conversation. With cold, thank you for spending this quiet time with us, drifting through forgotten echoes of history. If this story brought you peace, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs rest. We'd love to hear from you in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well, dream softly, and good night.